Stoa is a digital campfire where we cohere in dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of what's happening now.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Stoa. My name is Lloyd Cleveland and it's a pleasure to have you all here. And it's my delight and honor to introduce Corey Hess. Corey's been a big inspiration and a guide of mine for about 3 years now, and so I'm really pleased to be able to share his Dharma with more people. So tonight we thought we'd do it in kind of in 3 parts. The first part will be a little kind of an overview of Corey's journey through his monastic training at Sogenji in Okayama, Japan. And then after, we'll have a little discussion between Corey and I. And then after that, we'll open up for questions from the participants. So if you have any questions or thoughts that come up during the discussion, please feel free to put them into the chat. And when we open up to the questions at the end, we'll call on people, we'll kind of bring you in, and then we'll see where we go from there. So welcome, Corey. Shall we do a slideshow and kind of give everyone a view of where you've been and how you ended up where you are?
Sure. Why not? Sounds great.
Okay, let's see.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, hello, Mato Rishi. All right, so we're gonna share screen and let's see. Sorry, forgive me. Okay, maybe you should just start talking. I'm gonna figure this out. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Corey Ichigen Hess. I live out on Whidbey Island, north of Seattle. I lived at Sogenji in Okayama, Japan, and for most of my 20s, involved in that scene there. Here we go. And then I came back, and I've spent the last 15 years just sort of learning to communicate, learning to share myself, and try to offer myself and be helpful in some way. That's kind of my life mission. So yeah. So thanks so much for having me. I live out here with my 3 daughters and my beautiful partner, Teresa Shojun. And yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Here I am in the Kohojo. This is the New Year's. We're having Senzai, and I'm there with the Roshi. This is a very strange photo. That's Mumon Roshi on the photo behind. Yamazaki-san there helping out. And it was somehow a nice sunny day. We were serving up some food for guests that were there. This is also the room. This is one of the rooms that you wait in for Sanzen. So there's this room, and then on the other side of that is the other room. This is the Kohojo. You wait in there before you go to Sanzen. And then the Roshi's looking out into the beautiful Kohojo garden. Let's go to the next one.
Corey, I think we've got some people who are totally brand new to Zen, I imagine, who might be.
Yeah.
Let's kind of, yeah.
Okay. So, what's Zen? It's a branch of Mahayana Buddhism. What is Zen to me? It was a way for me to learn to interact with reality and to be helpful. I feel like I felt like my whole experience of life was one of not really being able to really touch life in a fundamental way. And also with a really huge desire to be helpful and of service somehow in my life. So these 2 strong forces for me led me to want to do some kind of training, some kind of deep practice to, make myself useful. I was suffering in a lot of ways because I couldn't really get to reality and experience it and be harmonious with it. So Zen is sort of the Spartan, the barren Buddhism, you know, lots of black, you know, the Tibetans sort of have the red and gold, and most of the Zen stuff's pretty black and sparse. And it's very clean in a certain way. So I went to a Zen monastery because I needed to get myself in order. And let's keep going. Let's keep going.
And maybe we'll just point out, so this is Sogenji, which is like a what, 400-year-old?
Something like that. It's an
Something like that.
imperial temple. Yeah, that's Hondo. That's a building there where we do the chanting. Okay, so in the morning we have choka there, and there are lots of ceremonies there also. It's also where we sit around the edges for yaza during Oseshin. This is the official spot where we all sit around there. Yeah, and so for people who don't quite understand, it's a place where you go and you live and you get up very early, and you're either sitting or you're working physically all day. You go and see a teacher 2 or 3 times a day. And the schedule is very rigorous there. There aren't really breaks, which is somewhat unique. This is Shoto Harada Roshi in both of these photos. And that's him doing Kyudo. We would do Kyudo behind the Hondo. This is on the other side of that huge building. And he's a phenomena. He's like a nuclear reactor. And meeting someone like that, you see potential. You see what life's potential can be. And for me, I was looking for something like that. And meeting the Roshi was finding that possibility to be able to push on reality and explore reality in a physical training environment. Let's keep going.
I just wanted to add a little. I love this photo of him doing Kyudo, because I really feel like you get a sense of the embodied training of Zen, like as it's actually manifesting in this seemingly mundane posture, right, of drawing a bow, and yet, like, you know, it's kind of astounding. Yeah, you see the directness, the clarity.
I know. Completely. So on these photos, the one with the white samugi is that's me when I first visited, and that was in June. And then the picture with the whole crew here standing by the pond, that's at Tahoma One Drop in on Whidbey Island, north of Seattle. And in the red is my current partner, Teresa, who also went to train at Sogenji. Up in the right-hand corner is me. I feel like during a tough time, training can be really tough. And that was a really tough time for me. And one of my good friends captured that. That's me cleaning the floor, mopping the floor. You run behind it. And this is, a great way to do morning cleaning, daily cleaning, Nitin Soji. And down on the right there at Sogenji, we would often do sit like this for lunch and meals, and we would do handaikan, the more formal, sometimes, not always. So I think that's a little different than other places. For some reason at Sogenji, they were doing the seating here at sitting on these awful logs, and eating there at the table, and the food would come down. That's me. Christian French took that photo of me on the bottom. Life for training for me, I love the training. It was a beautiful time for me. Chopping wood, one of my favorite activities. In the Tenzo Kura, I was reading some poems probably there. Maybe I was thinking about some capping phrase of some kind, maybe. Down there in the bottom, my great friend Shinjo and Sogaku. I'm not ordained yet in that photo. And on the bottom on left is we're getting ready to go for takuhatsu, which is the going to get alms around the city. Up on the top is a bunch of us at the yearly onsen, the hot springs visit, sitting around with the Roshi in a rare moment with him out with us. We're all sort of crowding around him, trying to soak up his field of energy and all that. Yeah. So came back. This is the night before my first daughter was born. I'm joking that I'm sort of on the phone to the midwife, but that was the night before, and really fantastic. So we left the monastery and came back and had a baby, and somewhat infamously. And let's see, and then there's on top there, she's a baby there with our great friend Shinjo. And this is my beautiful family, my 3 daughters on the beach. That's me in my daughter's sunglasses. And yeah, just family photos, walking in the woods, hanging out with the family. Now I'm a happy papa. Yeah, very blessed life.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it would be, let's see. Uh-oh, there I am. I thought it would be nice to show everyone, because I imagine that people might not easily kind of visualize what it means or looks like to train in a monastic environment in Japan. So now that everyone has kind of a vision, I wonder, yeah, let's jump into the questions. I think the first place I want to begin, just because there's so much confusion or sometimes like a lack of attention, is with the hara. So what is the hara? And what is the process that helped you find it and cultivate it? And yeah, let's begin.
Great. Well, I would like to talk specifically about the tanden, and so in the monastery, day one, you arrive and the Roshi just grunts at you and pats his belly, and there's no mention of figuring anything out ever. Figuring things out is not the goal. The goal is to become present and become physically in this space, and to focus on the tanden, 2 or 3 centimeters below the navel, in the middle of the belly, to start this almost like a little golden ball. And people often will feel the tanden in the lower back first. Okay, often they'll feel it there at first, but it's like growing a little fetus. It can't be forced. It's something that you have to pay attention to all the time. This sounds very strange at first. Little by little, it grows, it gains momentum. And little by little, your attention starts to magnetize there over and over. And it's not that you deny all of these other aspects. It's not that you're denying your heart energy. It's not that you're denying any other energy that's happening. You're aware of those, and yet you're focused there as this center of what you're doing. So in the monastery, you focus on what's called susokan at first, and this is exhaling completely and exhaling without force completely. And we all do it with force at first, of course, because that's what we do. And we try that, and then the energy comes up, and we become frustrated, and little by little, focusing on the tanden, little by little, the breath starts to focus, the breath starts to lengthen, our awareness starts to change. It starts to unify as we get more and more into our bodies, more and more one-pointed. I remember when I was at the monastery for about, 6 months or something, in my over intensity, I sort of chased down the Roshi in the hallway, and what do you want from me? And he says, actually my name was Corey then. He said, Corey, And he said, I want you to be in your body right now. That's what I want you to do. And for me, I wasn't in my body. I was divided. I was like going in 5 directions. I was a chaotic energy field. And so my job then became, I'll try to see if I can get myself moving in oneness. How can I get all of my being going in one direction all of the time? And how to do that for me was through the tanden, through finding the tanden, through unifying my awareness through this tanden. Little by little, that grows, and then it starts to happen on its own. It's not something that you've got to force. It's not something that you've got to control. It wants to happen after a while. It gains momentum, and then little by little, you become this arrow of focus more and more in this way. So, tanden, feeling the lower body emphasized more than the upper body. Okay, feeling the soles of the feet, focusing on rootedness in the lower body. Upper body is light and floating. Okay, we have so much focus on our upper body in our culture, but the old Japanese culture is lower body focused more. Yeah, and it grows and it changes. And I would say with the tanden, don't pin it down. Don't make it an idea. Don't force it into this idea you've heard. Okay.
What did that like look like and feel like in your zazen, in your meditation practice?
Well, in zazen, I feel like the body wants to do zazen. I feel like the body fundamentally wants to do zazen. And so as we're sitting there, at first, while we're sitting, we have no idea what's going on. We can't feel what's going on. And we're sitting there kind of bumping against ourselves. And then over time, through cultivating this energetic process that starts to happen through the tanden and through these in this internal alchemy, the body starts to have this momentum that happens. And then you see, oh, this zazen is all trying to happen if I can allow it, if I can get out of the way, if I can let this tanden start to do the work, then we can start to see, oh, I was blocked there unconsciously. And through this energetic aspect, we see, oh, I need to get out of the way there. I need to let that open in this way, which I could never have conceived of intellectually. Over time, the energetic process shows us more and more how to open up to it.
One thing that I really liked when in your discussions about Zhen Zhuang and qigong was the sense that that sometimes like zazen can be confused, that you might not even have a handle of where to go or what to do, and so these practices are really helpful in building the energy, actually getting something moving, getting an engine going that then you can relax or surrender, not relax, but surrender a little bit more. How zazen be more of a something moving through your process. But how did you get from that moment where zazen is kind of like, I know I should be here, I'm sitting zazen, to something that was more alive? What was that like for you?
Well, I think for me, zazen was somewhat of a roller coaster from day one. I was just sort of trying to hang out on the cushion without exploding. That was my process. And so, lots of pain, lots of tension. And so in many ways, I was learning to release all of that tension, releasing tension in the legs. If I can let that tension start to release through my legs, fills up my body. If I can learn to let go where I'm unconsciously holding, then my body starts to fill up. The tanden starts to activate. So I think for me, I was more of a pressure cooker. I never really had to get the engine going. The engine was sort of going already. And I've had these places where I was very locked up. And so doing zazen and doing these other practices like Jamjong, these standing energetic postures, I began to see very clearly where I was blocked, where I'm stuck. And seeing that, if I could work with that, I would see, oh, it wants to open in this way. And if I allow it to open, then this momentum will happen. So where I was a pressure cooker, my internal language developed more, and I was able to allow myself to open where I previously had been unconscious.
Mm. Do you
So
feel
more
like
and more.
oh, all right. Just I was wondering, do you feel like the monastic environment, that kind of strongly contained, full of forms, full of rules, did that help kind of give you a structure to work with because you were already bubbling up with this?
Yes, yes. I think you know, the monastery is this it's this oven of activity. You think everyone thinks you go to a monastery and everyone's just like so nice and sweet. And actually it's this oven where you cook. All of your stuff comes up. All of the, you know, I can't hide from that anymore because the oven's turned all the way up. That's how it feels. Lots of intensity, lots of fast movement. Um, and I think I really craved that structure, and I craved you know, in the monastery, you have time and you're forced to take time to explore this stuff. You can't check out, you can't leave, you can't, you know, you're forced to be on the cushion at this time. And then through that hour after hour of that structured time, yeah, it forced me to have to really face that stuff and become honest about it. Also, I feel like at Sogenji, there was a little bit of free time in the afternoons when we weren't during an O session, the week-long retreat. When we weren't in that, I had a little free time. And for me, I got a little creative time to just feel my body, where I wasn't in the Zendo with a fixed posture, where I wasn't being watched constantly. So I went out into the Kyudo area there, and I would walk around, or I would stand there, and I would question what it is to be in this body, question what it is, what's real. And I would do that in a physical way. And I would see, oh, I cannot feel this. I cannot face this. I'm separated from this. And my process began to be, how can I deeply interact with that? How can I find a way to connect with that, engage with it?
Mm. Yeah, I guess I feel like one of the reasons that I feel drawn to support support your voice and your wisdom is just because I feel like there are so few voices in our contemporary culture for formal monastic training, right? We have a lot of mindfulness teachers and meditation teachers and people kind of weaving things in and out. But
Yeah.
I feel like a voice in the conversation really has to be like there's a whole tradition for thousands of years, or maybe a
Yeah.
thousand, right, with Mahayana
Yeah.
Zen, of people who've been training in this way with a lineage, with ancestors kind of passed from one person to one person, with very specific teachings and techniques and methods and approaches. So, yeah, I wonder, what do you think the benefit of actually entering into a traditional lineage is?
Well, as far as becoming ordained, which would I think be officially entering into a lineage, I think what that does is that hit you're pulled into a whole traditional like a shoot. You become part of this tradition in a physical, energetic way. Um, for me, I was training there, and you know, when you're in the monastery, you're kind of like, this is amazing. I love this, and I hate this. I hate this so much. I don't want to be here, and I love this, and it's so wonderful. And then you get on this conveyor belt, and you see, oh, this whole environment is supporting me, and I'm changing here. I'm changing, and I'm changing, and you see, oh, this is deepening. This is deepening. And at a certain point, I had a big change. I had a big change, and when that happened, I said, you know, if this can really help someone like me, some goofy guy who loves sports and girls, whatever, and if that can help me, then I want to make my life about this. I want to have my life be an affirmation of this path, and seeing that the training really does work. It's very powerful. And so in that way, I think the forms are very powerful, very important. I also think the koans are very important. There's the lineage is not just ideas, it's not just history. It's as you go deeper into this, you're actually interacting with the states of mind of these teachers. So the lineage is you're taking on their states of mind, physically embodying that. And so walking around someone who's, say, a Roshi, they embody, they don't just have it in a mental idea, they embody the energy of these previous teachers. And that's what, lineage really is. So just having that in the world as a force is so powerful, I think. There's so many ideas out there about Zen, about spirituality, about enlightenment, but to have an actual energetic force that changes people if they're around it, that people can feel and begin to change cellularly because of that. That's very powerful, I think.
And yet it's not just kind of like a robotic rule following too, right? There's the structure and there's the forms, but there's also this creativity.
Yeah, it's the most rebellious people I've ever met are Zen monastics. That's the truth. The most the wildest people have shaved heads and they're wearing crazy ancient clothing in zori, these flip-flops, and it's a wild bunch. It's a wild bunch. And you think, it'd be all these nice people again, but it's like the biker gang showed up in Japan, and it's all these people, who are using this container to deeply question and explore reality. And so the container actually allows this real creativity. You don't have to, for one thing, you don't have to buy food. You don't have to support yourself. In this environment, you can spend 24 hours a day working on this process. You can use the forms constantly. You're constantly working on this energetic process. It's such a gift to be able to be in that environment for a while.
Could you just describe a little bit? Yeah, what is it? Just so I want to give people a taste of what it's like. What is it like to be kind of absorbed in that practice as you're going through your everyday life at the monastery? Like what? Yeah. What are you experiencing?
So,
what are you paying attention to?
Yeah. Well, I will say, let's say I'm talking about in the midst of the Mu Koan. Okay, I'm in the midst of the Mu Koan. I wake up and the Mu is always there. It's always there. The Mu Koan is the first koan. It's the breakthrough koan, and you once your zazen has gotten to a certain point, deep into a certain point, you're giving a first koan, and when you're in the midst of that, it starts to grow and grow, and it starts to unify your energetic field and unify your body, and so you wake up and you're doing this mu. Mu is always there. Mu, 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 and all day long you're doing this mu. You're going to you wake up and you may be pissed off, like it's 3:30 a.m. I don't want to wake up, but you get up and you put your bedding away. I used to sleep outside, put my bedding away, and then run over there, and you're mad, but you love it too. And then you go and you brush your teeth. You go and you do chokas first at Sogenji. You're doing choka, and choka's like this rock concert of energetic opening. So you're chanting, and it's loud, and it's focused, and it's powerful. And sometimes you're also exhausted completely, and the Roshi's yelling at you to wake up. And then you have to go back to the Zendo and then go see the Roshi for the first time of the day. You've been preparing for Sanzen since you went last night. So you've been working on that, and you think, I'm gonna go show him. I'm gonna go give, and you go yell moo, and I'm gonna go show him. I'm gonna give him the best moo right now. I'm gonna really show him this time, you know. And for me, I would be in the Zendo, and I would often wait back at a certain point because I really wanted to work in the Kohojo for just a little bit of time, and I would really like to get the moo is like this overflowing of energy, and you go in and the cup overflows and you yell the moo, and it's not that you're forcing it, it's this overflowing. So I would like to wait back and go in to see the Roshi and express this, and you know, he's both encouraging and insulting, and then you go back and you finish zazen, go to breakfast, work for the day, getting ready all day to go see the Roshi again in the evening. This is what's called co-session, where you're working during the day. So you're working in the garden, working in the kitchen, and it becomes this whole beautiful creative process. How can I work on this moo? How can I work on my tanden work all day long? And for certain people, that's very exciting. It's very exciting to find that sweet spot with reality and explore it and push against it. And washing the rice, how can I explore that? How can where's the moo in that? How can I explore that all day long? And then changes start to happen. Things start to deepen. You start to lose your awareness sometimes. You start to become engrossed in things, and you're lost for a moment, and that deepens further. And then you go yell the moo in the evening, and there's nothing there. You're both just laughing, and you have no idea what's going on, and he rings you out, and you keep going, and that deepens, and that deepens. And the monastery is this environment where you can lose that control for a while and dive into this process of opening and deepening. And then one day things maybe make a big change. Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like where?
Well, yeah. Well, I think one has to be a little careful because everyone approaches this in a slightly different way. I will say that the moo sharpens. It sharpens. The moo is this way for us to interact with reality. It pulls us into oneness, and it's like where we're separated from the moment. The moo is this way to unify and move through that open to this open place. This open place starts to happen, and you become so focused on it, drilling like you're drilling for oil, drilling with your awareness deeper and deeper. And one day you hit this great life energy, and it shatters you. It opens you up. The bucket drops out, and then you're different. You're changed, and you've gone through a transformation. It's not that you're better, or it's that you've hit that, and once you've hit that, then your perspective is forever different. Your perspective on everything, and that's pretty much what happened with me. I could feel things down to and touching that great life energy, and had a big change. So.
And then, I mean, and then eventually you left the very kind of, yeah. I mean, there's so much of the atmosphere of the monastery that so everything's conducive, right? It's all like,
Yeah.
yeah, zazen.
Yeah.
And then you leave, right? And then the world is there with all of its, you know, colors and varieties, and you have a family, a beautiful family, and a wonderful wife. So how did you translate this, your practice, you know, and then this experience into the life outside?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's like for me, it was like I was a newborn baby. You know, I had no idea to really communicate after that. So I had to learn how to, um, I had to learn to communicate. Um, Often when you have a big change like that, you got to learn how to take step again. You got to learn how to walk. And for me, I needed that. I needed time to integrate. I needed time to uh, figure out how to bring it into every moment. The physical practices were really good for me with that. Um, and often people will have big experiences, and if they don't have a physical practice to work on that, this is what's so great about, Zazen, the monastery, or some of these other energetic practices, is that they help you to keep your body open and to work with your body. If they don't have that, people run into a lot of trouble with that. A lot of the people I work with now, they've had experiences and they can't function because they can't really work on that embodied in an embodied way. So for me, it took a long time to figure out what the right medium was for me. And slowly I started to write this blog. And the blog was kind of a way for me to kind of get some of this stuff out, hash it out, find out what was true, and be able to express it simply and clearly. When I first came out, I was, a little messy. I was giving people advice, stuff like that, and you think you're this or that. And I also felt like if I would talk about spirituality, there would be this truth, and I could sort of not work with it. I could sort of talk about things, but little by little, I saw that to really integrate that, it took me a long time to stay true with that deep experience, to stay true with that in my writing, in my interactions with people. That was a long process to learn how to do that. It was messy. And then I started doing body work as a way for me to communicate with people. So here's someone's body, and how can I work with it to help it open? And in that, I learned in this little laboratory of client and myself, it was a laboratory for me to explore relating. How can I relate in a harmonious way with people? How can I meet them? How can I meet reality? And so I did that for 10 years. And I started teaching these workshops about a year ago now, with the Jamjong and these other practices I did while at Sogenji. And it's been really wonderful. Somehow I have a pretty good ability to articulate some of the finer points of these energetic problems that we all have, many of us have. And so that's been wonderful, being able to start to share that with people, to offer myself. Yeah, that's been my process.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we've got about 20 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions you'd like to ask Corey, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll call on you. I have a question in the meantime, but I would love to hear from you all. And I'd love to see your faces too, if you'd like to turn on your cameras. But I guess just one thing struck me earlier today was that sometimes Buddhism is talked about as this kind of like mechanical upgrade, like you're optimizing your hardware or something. And what struck me so much about your blog when I first encountered it was this sense of reverence, actually, of like awe that emerged from your practice. That it was really, that there was sometimes people are so allergic to religion that we don't even want to use the words, but just some kind of like sense of the sacred or of something much larger than you that you had managed to find a relationship with. So would you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think when I was there at Sogenji for about a year, I got really sick. And I almost lost my eyesight. in one eye, and I had to lay in this tatami room, and I couldn't do my work. I couldn't go run around and dig ditches and cook, and I couldn't go to the zendo, and they had to bring me food. I open the door and get the food. And in that time, I had to just give up. I totally had to give up all of my earnestness. I had to give up all of this trying, all this forcing, all of this running, all of this intensity. And in that, somehow I found that there was still this, what I call this second breath, this energetic momentum was always there. Even in my most pitiful time, there was this great life energy moving through me. And I saw that it was even more than what I had recognized before. And I saw that it was there trying to guide me constantly. And after that, after I came out of that, my zazen was totally different. My practice totally shifted. And I saw that in order to really do my practice, I had to align with that as my guide. And I would call that grace, or great life energy, or many words for that. But there was something much greater than me guiding me constantly. And my job was to be honest enough to be open to that and receive it. And when I did that, I healed. My practice started to really take off. And I saw how huge the present moment wasn't this thing I needed to manipulate. It was this huge, whatever you want to call it, divine thing.
Wow, we're getting some questions. How exciting. So let's see, Chris Lizama, would you like to ask your question? Do you want to turn on your camera? Or just ask?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I don't have a webcam on this computer. But I was wondering if you could talk about the connection between physical exercise and meditation. Because it's something I've read about in some of the Rinzai materials. That seems to be more of a focus on that kind of physical aspect.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the monastery, there's a reason why you do the physical work, and it's there's obviously these old stories. If you don't work, you don't eat. But on the other hand, there's this aspect that you get your ki flowing from the work. So you're physically working, and so I think physical activity is really important for getting that ki flowing. I would say that at first when we're there, we're pretty vulgar how we move. We're pretty physically vulgar, and everything in the monastery moves fast, and so you're just sort of trying to keep up. And over time, as you get into it more, your movement starts to unify, and you start to relax, and the ki starts to flow through more. And then you're not forcing, and you're not stressing so much. It forces you to find this way to be carried by this energy. And so over time, you can use the physical activity to interact with how to be led by this energy. So it's a whole dialogue that happens. So, I think that's really important to have the physical work and activity for the zazen. It goes into the zazen, and they feed each other.
Would you like any follow-up, Chris?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we also have a question from Nathan Kessel. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for being here and for offering all this, Corey. This has been fantastic. What you were talking about in terms of energetic blockages really resonated with me, and I'm super curious if you have any recommendations for me or any of us who have these energetic blockages and want to work through them as intensely and quickly as possible. If you have any recommendations of where we might go or look to to have some guidance or facilitation along the unblocking process.
Yeah, well, of course, if you can find a Zen teacher, if you can find a qualified, Zen teacher like Mado's here, someone like that, I don't know where you are, but if you're for me, some of the Chinese exercises were really helpful for me. The what's called Jamjong, which is like post standing. This has been really helpful for me from the monastery. This is something I did every day. And what the post standing does is it while you're there, in order to hold this posture, which is not easy, you hold it maybe up to 20 minutes. In order to do that, you have to let go of these stuck places. You can't hold your arms up unless you start to relax. Okay, so there are practices like this where you can use the practice to interact with and begin to work with those energetic stuck places. Okay, so that's what I'd recommend. I'd recommend either finding a Zen teacher, especially one who's in this embodied way, a Rinzai teacher. I think that's or an amazing Soto teacher who has an embodied aspect to their teaching. And also, I think the body practices are very helpful. I also do something called non-directed body movement. I started this in college, and it's really repackaged old Chinese, qigong. It really is. It's all the same stuff. It's just repackaged, but letting the body reveal how it wants to open. But I think the energetic practices like Jamjong, very helpful for instance, okay, if you have a stuck place in your mid back, okay, and you stand there, in order to do that, something will start to, if you're standing there, in order to really stand there for a while, this will start to heat up. It will start to become frustrated. Okay, and in that, to hold it, you have to relax. And in that relaxing, the body starts to fill up. The body starts to change that. You see, oh, I've got to let that go. And most of the day, we can ignore or not be conscious of those spots. But during the Jamjong, you can't ignore it. There it is. And like, I've got 10 more minutes to stand here. I can't ignore it for that amount of time. So it forces us to relax those unconscious, generally unconscious places. It heats up the body to where you can ignore them, and then you have to let them go. So there's this idea of our internal vocabulary starts to become more sophisticated about dealing with these things. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And just as a note, because you didn't mention this, Corey's offering 5 classes online a week for qigong, zhenzhuang, and non-directed movement. So you're welcome to join. There's a wonderful little community of some Zen practitioners and some people I have known all over the world. I'm not even sure where they all came from, but it's wonderful. Wes is here; he's part of it. So yeah, please join. And then you also do one-on-one sessions, Corey, and
Yep.
there'll be another month-long intensive with kind of daily practices and weekly check-ins with other members. So yeah, if you'd like kind of a guide and a community to do some of this work,
it's been really wonderful. Yeah, and there's this aspect of energetic field, and somehow it translates over these screens. You'd think it wouldn't. No, that wouldn't happen, but it does. It's amazing. So it's true.
Okay, so we have a question from Chris D. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, Corey, thanks for coming on. So my question is, how do you relate to your emotions and other people's emotions after your monastic practice, and specifically trying to deal with people that are sensitive? How do you how do you help them release it, but how do you help them be more disciplined emotionally?
Yeah. I think that being sensitive is wonderful, and it's a wonderful gift to be sensitive. And being sensitive actually can give us more ability to interact with this stuff. Okay. And chances are that person who's very sensitive, they're also pretty unconscious about some aspect of it. Okay. So I'm very sensitive, and yet there's this blind side there. And that blind side is the problem. So these practices, they slowly allow us to be more conscious of more of the situation. And so chances are where the person thinks they're really sensitive is where they're blocked. That's where they're blocked. So for me, with my process being very sensitive, I begin to see my way of interacting with reality, with people, was meeting them, merging with them. And where I'm blocked, where I'm rigid, then that's the problem. And if I can meet what's happening, become what's happening, then those blocked parts start to dissolve. They start to dissolve, becoming more conscious. So the sensitive person actually has to become more sensitive. They're sensitive, and yet they're blocked. That's usually what's going on. I would also say that, these practices, they get you into your body. They get you able to move this stuff. They get you rooted in your physicality, lower body. And some of this stuff over time becomes less loud. All of this hard energy stuff that's volatile, it becomes less of this master that's getting us all the time. This rising key slowly changes, and we become more harmonized in our bodies, in situations. This stuff, this internal alchemy really does work. It really changes people. But yeah, becoming more familiar, meeting what's happening. And I think when we're sensitive, we want to meet things, but then we're so afraid, we all are, and then we want to block off certain aspects, and that's often the problem. Does that make any sense? Keep asking.
Yeah. I would just want to ask on the point of, okay, these practices, they allow you to meet people, and then they allow you to be more resilient to what is coming to you. But is there ever a point where you might need to sever a tie because you don't think it's going anywhere? Or
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, right. This is very real. This is real stuff, right? And so, yeah, we've got to be careful. I think as we mature with this stuff, all of us, we get, just what happens too is as we deepen with this stuff, you have a certain gravitas that starts to happen, and you're not that happens, and then you're not pulled into things in the same way. You're not as fragile in a certain way. People won't mess with you in a certain way. This just happens as we slowly harmonize more with our own center, our own practice. We're not putting our chin out all the time to be hit. Naturally we start to become more centered, more deep. And that, it's not something easily talked about, but and that's a maturing aspect as much as it is an energetic thing. I think that happens. But yeah, that's something that I think is slowly happening for me over the last 15 years. When I was first, in the monastery, I was basically just trying to exist in my body, and very sensitive to everything around me, and to people, and pulled in by them, and caught in the swamp. You know what I mean? You end up in the swamp, right? And I think over time that that definitely settles and deepens, and is not we're not pulled in the same way. It's a whole harmonizing, deepening thing. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions if you want to put them in the chat. I thought maybe just because we do have Maida Roshi here, shall we open it up and just see if Maida Roshi wants to add any comments, observations? Maida Roshi is the
I'm just here to learn from.
Sorry?
I'm just here to learn from Corey. I'm just here to learn from each again. So.
It's Meido Moore, who's the abbot at a Rinzai monastery in Wisconsin called Grunji. He just published a recent book called Hidden Zen, which is marvelous. His first book was called The Rinzai Zen Way, and very, very focused on embodied practice with very specific practices to get into those. So highly recommend it. Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So I guess, Corey, like I just want to, what I most want to offer people is people who are just beginning, who are like new to the meditation world. There's apps, there's teachers, maybe they've started sitting, but like something hasn't quite taken off for them, you know? Like I feel like I really want to offer, yeah, like authentic, deep, transformative teachings to people in that moment so that they don't have to kind of figure out the long way. So what would you say to those beginning?
Yeah. Well, I would find a teacher. Obviously, I would find a teacher, and you learn this stuff through the body, through osmosis with a teacher, and it's a process. It's not an idea. It's not really an app. You know, it's this stuff is you know, it's something we've got to learn to interact with reality, with our life. And that is not an idea. I think the physical practices can be a great entrance into this stuff. Yeah, there's so much out there. I would find a teacher. If you found a teacher, watch them move. Watch them move. If they're beautiful when they move, that's a really interesting way to start. What's going on there? Where are they moving from? Are they grounded in their physicality? People who've really broken through, they're very unusual. They're very unusual. And meeting someone like that is life-changing. So I would find the right flavor for you, the one that you meet and something starts to erupt in you, something excites you in some way. And maybe it's even scary. Meeting someone like that, a real teacher is very unusual. So that's what I recommend. Find someone like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope I haven't just babbled like crazy here.
Not at all. So I guess we're at the end of our time. I'm gonna paste some links to Corey's stuff so that you can find him online. Yeah, I highly recommend joining the group and reading his amazing blog. It changed my life 3 years ago. So that was not it. I am not so technologically skilled. So, and so in the meantime, Peter asked me to announce the next session that we have on the Stoa will be this Monday, which will be psychedelic sense making with Alexander Boehner, March 1st at 2 p.m. He's from Rebel Wisdom, and he returns to the Stoa to discuss the intersection of psychedelics and sense making. So, yeah, come join if you're interested in that. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us today. It's a real, pleasure and honor to be able to spread the voices of the Dharma. And Corey, do you have any last words you'd like to share?
No, maybe just, you know, you can do this practice if you want to. You can do it, and you can, it's a beautiful practice, and you can give yourself to it and break through if that's your desire. It's possible, and don't let anyone tell you you can't. So, yeah, thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you.